Mm-hmm.
So
I have to admit something to you right now. I forgot to hit the audio recording button.
do we have to start over? I mean, I'll start over. You want me to take it from the mail scene?
Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, we can't say that anymore.
Steg?
Wow. Folks.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Dave review. We've reviewed every episode of season 2. If you like this content, check out some of our other content. We have a podcast called the Podcast where we basically talk about nothing. Please like and subscribe. And we have one more episode of Dave season 2. But before we get to the finale, we wanted to talk about episode 9 a little bit more and Dave's ego.
We call this 9.5.
This is 9.5. With me, resident reader, co-host, master egoist, Ms. Amanda Loblonsky. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I wanted to talk a lot about Dave's ego. I think we missed a lot of that. There's a lot to unpack there. That was a huge episode.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff before we get to the ego.
Yeah, I want to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I have thoughts.
Let me know.
Okay, first and foremost, I need to know who out there still has the shutter click sound on their smartphone.
Yeah.
It's
unreasonable.
Stuck out like a sore thumb in my first watch through. I understand it was relevant to the plot. It kind of advanced it.
Yeah. I remember thinking, I wonder if he saw his reflection or something. Like, what gave it away that he actually saw him? And then
did you just take my picture?
Yeah, and then rewatching. That was a good Biff Whiff.
Thanks. I really identify with Biff Whiff.
Who doesn't?
I think I aspired to be Biff Whiff.
Aren't we all just...
This will come up again later in the episode.
Aren't we all just Biff Whiff?
If I could Biff Whiff my way through life, I would.
Yeah.
Like, Biff Whiff is my role model.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just say it.
He's a treasure.
Yeah.
He really is.
Adams, on the other hand, I really enjoyed Adams, my first watch through, but I watched it again today, shortly after a pretty deep existential crisis. Don't worry, this is a regular occurrence for me, like monthly. So, pretty
standard stuff.
Standard stuff for me. And when Adams clarified atoms, I got this deep sense of peace and relief. I was like, yes. I too am just atoms, sentient atoms, but I'm not responsible for all the things that I think I am.
Yeah.
And I needed to hear that, if I could have turned the episode off then, and had a much better day.
That resonated with you.
It resonated. It improved my trajectory. I should have done the research. Who's the actor in Lemon?
It's not that guy, but
I know.
Yeah.
I know it's not. But the whole time I enjoyed picturing him as being part of the Dave universe.
He would have been well cast.
He would have nailed it. I actually think he might have done it too well.
Yeah.
And you told me that's a director?
Yeah, he directed a lot of the episodes. Yeah, I think not actually that one. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the other ones. Like the wedding episode in season 1.
Classic episode.
Yeah, classic. We haven't reviewed that one, but maybe we will.
I think we should.
Okay.
Do you think we should? Season 1 really took a turn around the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it laid the groundwork for a lot of season 2, which you and I have talked about off camera. They say that you loathe where you came from and you fear that that's all you have.
Yeah.
Mine is not my upbringing, but I know that I have that. I have yet to name it. It would go on my list of things that I bury somewhere on the property.
Yeah.
There's something in me about me that I loathe, and fear is the only thing that I have.
Yeah. Is that someone said that? Is that Tolstoy?
I don't know.
You know what I remember it from? Funny enough, is Orange County. It's what Kevin Kline says to Colin Hanks when he finally like gets to meet the guy that wrote the book that he's obsessed over. But it's more about specifically your hometown.
Yeah.
But I think it's the idea, you know.
Yeah. I think mine is a little bit more nebulous, and I should probably tease it out. Maybe get back in a float tank.
Yeah, that stuff's hard.
But I process better while writing. If I'm in a float tank, I'm chilling and maxing. Like, you couldn't pay me to think about anything in a float tank. That was just like some powerful truth medicine right there.
Yeah.
And
he's like, I'm going to write that down to tell Rick.
The fact that's Rick's diagnosis.
That's Rick's diagnosis.
The fact that Dave was so Dave that Adams lost their cool for a moment.
Is that how you interpreted
that?
that?
To me.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't see it that way.
Not like not so much that like Dave intentionally or willfully pushed any buttons, but Adams was like, I'm going to take this gentle approach. I'm going to shut up, wake up, like stop being Dave for 5 freaking seconds. I liked that.
I think that Adams is smart enough to know that approach wouldn't work. But I guess then the question would be, why did he scream wake up at him? But I almost think that that's like a tempering, like a...
Ooh, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, like get ready for what's
like,
coming.
Soft backhand, soft backhand.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even the exchange about literally.
Oh my God, that was so funny.
Where are we? I assume you don't mean literally. Like, yes, literally, and then he's...
People keep doing that to me. They say literally, and then they don't actually mean
okay,
that.
what do you want? What are you here for?
Yeah. I'm trying really hard. Like, I'm trying to be an honest person and like answer and
I just thought it was interesting
solve my
that
problems.
Adams changed affect. But at no point did it feel like Adams lost control. It wasn't like, I can't handle you. It was just like, I'm going to try a few different things. I'm going to throw some spaghetti at Dave and see what sticks. The Wi-Fi password.
Go inward.
I just had to mention that was comic gold. That was so subtle.
Oh,
her reaction.
Yeah.
Just
her face.
Inward.
Yeah.
Her face.
This is a great spot that I want to talk about the sound design of this show in general, because we have never talked about it, and it's incredible. They do this thing that I've noticed where they'll play the backing track for the scene, and as soon as someone like enters a room or something happens, it completely cuts off, which is not new. I mean, that people have done that forever, but they do it a lot, and you would think you'd get sick of it and it would be like overbearing and annoying. It's not. It works so subtly and so well. So he comes back to the room at Rick Rubin's house and lays on the bed, and he's looking at his phone, and the music is playing up until, and it's zooming out from him to reveal her.
You can see that other person.
Right. And it cuts as soon as she says something, and he goes, "Oh!" That's when the music cuts. And there's more examples of it that I could point out, but that one is a really good example of it. Like, I just love that.
And I want to back that up as a lay person who doesn't notice that stuff. I think that if you're in the industry, you are supposed to notice that stuff. It's part of how you design your own work. However, I think there's a lot to be said about things like that go unnoticed by the layperson. If I was constantly thinking about sound design, it would take me out of it. And they're clearly doing it in a way that does not take me out of it. It's just subtle enough that I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's doing your job well enough that that nobody notices. That's a pretty common thing in the behind the scenes
in the industry.
Yeah.
He writes down failure and then immediately, like, I'm sure some of it is, screen time processing, but immediately changes it to success. And I think that's very accurate. I think that's true for pretty much all humans, not just creatives. It feels like we feel failure, but in reality, we fear success. But what's the difference? Like, that's all in your own personal definition. What feels like failure to me might feel like success to you. It's semantics. And more importantly, I think that success just opens up the door for more and more failures. Think of your one-hit wonders.
Oh,
if you'd never had that one hit, no one would call you a one-hit wonder.
Oh, wow.
Lily Sobieski had a couple of amazing performances. You don't even know who she is.
That's a little presumptuous of the audience.
Comment. Tell me if you remember Lily Sobieski. If the name rings a bell and you're not thinking of the vodka and you don't have to search on a search engine, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Where has Lily been for the last 2 decades? Are you a success because a big brand bought a song that you had already written? Or are you a success because you're writing a brand new jingle for that big brand? I refuse to name a big brand. It's not my style.
Yeah.
I can think of artists that I love who have eventually sold existing work to a big brand. And I remember thinking when I heard that commercial for that vehicle, like, you're not a sellout. You wrote that song. It means what it means to you. And this car company happened to buy it from you. It's totally different when you're like, you want to commission a piece.
What's your next note?
So now we're approaching the float tank. And Adams is explaining the float tank idea.
Wait, can we talk about the Kava by LeVar? I knew you would remember that because
LeVar Burton.
LeVar Burton, and it did cross my mind.
Adams talks about how Dave's instinct is to just joke.
Yeah.
But when Adams said that you follow that instinct blindly, I got a little confused.
Okay.
Because I personally tend to think of instinct and intuition, I guess, is the same thing. And I, as an overthinker, would like to follow my instincts and my intuition more blindly. It's backfired on me the times that I've had instincts that I did not follow. So I thought it was really interesting how Adams is trying to get Dave, I guess, to distill his instinct. And I guess more than anything, it made me rethink my relationship with instinct.
We really need to tie that back into the conversation after he has the conversation with the ego, because I really think he does. So he goes completely against that advice. This is skipping ahead, but he decides to follow that instinct blindly.
Right. And I think we need to get through the ego before we talk about that.
All right. Just dog ear it.
So he gets in the float tank.
Yeah.
He gives up so quickly.
Yeah.
So recently you had your first float tank experience.
Yeah. I was really resistant. I never wanted to do a float tank. I knew that I couldn't keep talking shit about float tanks without having ever done it.
I love that was your motivation.
So you
wanted to talk more shit, you had to get in it. So you could get out and talk more shit.
So being the obstinate man that I am, I signed up for us to do a float tank so that I could continue talking shit. So I could be right. And feed my ego. Did
it work out for you?
No, it was the complete opposite. Like I said before, I loved it. It was great. and I was not bombarded with my own thoughts. It was like trying to fall asleep, but without the pressure of having to go to sleep.
Yeah, there's no like, I have to wake up in 6 hours to go to work.
No.
Yeah.
You can, it's like...
You could sleep or not sleep for hours.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's like, it might be what I need to face all that nonsense. I don't know. It's quite expensive.
I would never get out of a float tank after 5 loud, noisy thoughts.
He was like, I'm not a spiritual person, and this mumbo jumbo, like, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So he was already saying no before he got in.
Yeah.
Like,
do you want to talk about Gaeta? Because I don't.
I mean, I love Gaeta, yeah.
I'll talk about Gaeta all day long. I mean, do you want to talk about Gaeta in this episode? I closed my eyes for it felt like 5 minutes. It was probably a minute and a half. As soon as the knife came out, I closed my eyes.
Yeah.
And I did not really open them through the dinner scene. I would honestly like to rewatch season 1 just to watch Gaeta develop, which I think they do beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
The tiny use of flashback, his character... His personality, like as a human, is interesting to me, even outside of his interaction with the group.
Yeah.
I think the portrayal of mental health challenges is very human and humane.
That might be my favorite episode.
I was kind of thinking that. I don't
know.
I got to rewatch
This one
it.
is so good, though. It's between this one and that one.
But why?
I love that episode.
Why is not Mike a redhead in this trip? How much do I love the black shoe polish look? It's not even like a...
Yeah, it's very corny. It's not redhead.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were worried I wouldn't notice that he wasn't a redhead, which is entirely valid.
Yeah.
My brain kind of jumped to he is so egocentric and so Dave focused that a crucial identity piece of his friend is completely erased.
Holy shit.
Like as if he had pictured Gaeta with a fro or a fade instead of dreads.
That's so good.
You know, kind of like we were also recently talking about how your brain fills in all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. You're not actually seeing it. Your brain is just kind of
your periphery, yeah.
Using object permanence to be like, yeah, there's a this over there and a that over there, and you have never really seen Mike. Like Mike takes pride in his redheadedness, as was evidenced in episode 2, where he's spouting off facts about old Saint Nick, the redhead. You know, strapping.
I forgot about that.
Strapping guy.
I forgot about that.
We only see him old and fat. It's just a realistic reflection on how he views friendships. Okay. Gaeta is there to be consumed. So it's not so much like you have intentionally and willfully ignored this large part of Mike.
Right.
It's that you have not taken the time to look at this person and see this person. I'm kind of surprised that Els only had that tiny little piece in the trip, but maybe that's telling as well. So then we meet the ego.
David Andrew Burd.
It's he finally went to the barber that Mike suggested and took care of that too Jewish look.
Too Jewish, that's right.
Now he just looks like an egg that gave birth to another egg.
Oh my God. I remember Gaeta was like, what you talking about, man? He doesn't even have the thing on his head.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
He's not too Jewish.
Cultural differences.
So you've read a lot about the ego.
Yes.
And there's a few lines in here that I feel like I've rewatched this scene. I've rewatched the episode a few times, and I've rewatched this scene maybe 10 times. And there's still some lines that I truly don't understand. As soon as he walks in, he asks him if he likes the music, right? And he says, let me play you some more. Dave's like, I want to hear it. Plays him the song about
masturbating.
About masturbating. I've never had a menage.
I'd rather have a fiance.
He tells me he loves it. I'd like those files, right? So he realizes that it's his ego and that he needs to kill him. And he says, Do we choose weapons or something? And the ego says, the way in which I would destroy you
Beat you to a pulp.
would be spellbinding. I love that word, spellbinding. But it did make me wonder if Dave could actually take his ego and what the repercussions of that would be.
Bad.
You need your ego.
Bad. Don't kill your ego.
Yeah, see, this is what because I knew you would know more about this. Do you think that Dave was embodying the id in this? Like, is that too literal?
No. It is so much more basic. I honestly think Dave with the hair
Yeah.
is the living ego, the walking, breathing, like blend of id, ego, society, etc. And then Egg Dave is pure, unadulterated ego.
Whoa, okay.
And
Dave is his waking mind.
yeah,
in this.
Harry Dave is just walking on the
Okay.
street, Dave. You and me.
He's everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are that Dave now.
Yeah.
And full on Dave says, it seems as though they're portraying a selfish man.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
that was the moment. It was like a light bulb moment for me. Like, Dave has learned nothing from this.
Right.
It seems as though they are, he doesn't bust in and go like, I'm a selfish man and like,
Yeah.
we need to talk about this. He goes, it seems like they think
Right.
I'm selfish.
The things-
so like, let's talk about, like, I don't know.
The things that I've seen are
The
portraying a selfish person.
hallucinations
Yeah.
are attempting to portray a selfish man.
So there's a line that I really love here where the ego is like, he explains you couldn't get more over it, right? And then he's like, I could explain all this to you. I just don't want to. I mean, I could, but I don't want to. Like, that is the pure definition of ego.
That is ego.
Right?
I wrote that down as well. He's like, I can't explain all this. I can, but I don't want to.
But I don't want to.
How many times have you done that in your life? Like, I can,
Yeah.
but I don't want to. What about that aardvark? I mean, the anteater. So I wrote aardvark because double A, I immediately was like, oh, that's an aardvark.
Interesting.
But it's not. It's an anteater.
That would be AV. That's a typo.
No, AE for anteater,
Aardvark.
which is one word.
No, aardvark.
No, aardvark is AARDVARK. If you know what that's from, please tell me. I'll be real excited.
So you think...
Aardvark is
interesting.
double A. But it's an anteater. And I double checked. It's not an aardvark.
Yeah.
I learned some things that are different about anteaters and aardvarks. They're very, very similar, though.
I was letting that double A thing float around in my head, and I was leaving it in the placeholder I like left on it was just like, your brain does weird things like that, right? Sure. But even with throwing in the addition of aardvark, it makes it even better because that's weird connections that your brain goes like aardvark, anteater, double A, and it sticks somehow.
Right. It shouldn't stick, but it does.
Yeah.
The ego is just all about justification.
Yeah.
And it doesn't ring true. It doesn't stand out until right around when the anteater comes in. Everything the ego says up to that point seems insightful. And that is the true skill of ego in real life. Ego sounds convincing. Ego has self-preservation in mind. Ego does not want you to ever be able to look at it and go, aha, ego, because that is a threat to the preservation of ego. Ego wants to be subtle and subconscious. Ego is all those justifications for those shitty things you said to your friends and justification for why you failed that class. Like, ego is not when you go, I really do not enjoy molecular biology and I failed that class because I don't enjoy it. Ego is, the professor sucked. I had a lot going on. My job, my this, my that. Like, that's ego.
So looking ego in the face diminishes those excuses.
Right.
Which deflates ego.
And if you can look at your ego and go like, no, man, you failed that class because you didn't study, because your alcoholism really ramped up last semester. Like, ego can't handle that kind of honesty. Ego is not interested in truth. Ego wants to justify. And at one point, ego says, I have been down here this whole time. He didn't say I've been up here this whole time. He said, I've been down here this whole time. And I don't know. That
is that significant in some way?
It's not your higher self.
Right.
Your ego is your lizard brain, your defense mechanisms, your defensiveness. And if this ball-headed creature had said, I've been up here this whole time waiting for you, like, that would be like self-discovery, like higher self. No.
Interesting.
This is your shitty self, and it happens to be hairless and covered in white, which is, you know, this literary allegory of purity. Mm-hmm. But that's not what ego is.
Right.
Like, but
ego would like you to believe that. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So when he says, I can't explain this all to you. Well, I can, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's where it all started to fall apart for me. That's where it all started to get unraveled. That's
see
where
the
ego's mask, like, he gets a little bit more defensive. He gets a little bit more worked up. It's not about like, how cool am I? And aren't you excited you found me? It's like, you need me.
Is that before or after he yells, it's after, because he yells shut up when he's telling him AE is a typo.
Yes.
AA is a typo.
Yes. So man on the street Dave is starting to ask too many questions.
Right.
Like, noticing that AA doesn't make sense. Ego's like, shut up. Like, just... we are so fucking cool. Like, nothing's cooler than us. Why are you thinking about things that are not as cool as us? Yeah.
Such a great portrayal. I love all of this.
Street Dave says, I've been holding myself down this whole time.
Yeah.
And the ego says, you should have been holding me down in all this time.
So, yeah, I've rewatched it so many times. And it's like the delivery... Oh, I've been holding myself down this whole time. Exactly. And you should have been holding me down.
Yes. So it's interesting because the ego is generating this fire content. It's so good.
Right.
But ego even acknowledges, kind of counterintuitively, like, against its own self-preservation, that you need to hold me back. Like, you need to get your ego in check.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was my take on it. Second watch. Kind of first watch.
So maybe the first line isn't so literal. Can they work in tandem?
They can, because Street Dave is so much more than an ego. Street Dave has compassion that's just not been allowed to flourish because ego's too loud.
Yeah.
Street Dave knows that Els deserves tons of recognition, but ego says, I am the star. It's just like another weird chink in ego's armor. Like, ego's kind of losing it here. Like, not in the way that Adams like chooses to lose it. Like, Adams chooses to yell at Dave every once in a while because that's what Dave needs. That's how Dave communicates. Ego's like, you can't kill me, but you need to hold me down.
That leads well into the next part. So then they start choking. I think we might be a little in disagreement on this, but
agreed.
As they're choking, Ego says, AA, the plan, do it. And it sounds like he's saying the switch. But in the captioning, it says, wheel switch.
And I cranked up the volume, watch 2, and I hear with my human earballs, hit the switch.
Okay.
Like,
hit the switch.
Like there's a switch somewhere.
That's kind of what I thought I heard the very first time I watched it. And that's why I didn't pay it any mind. But yeah, the next time I watched it and I had the captioning on and I saw a wheel switch, it never left my head. And now I'm wondering if the ego in this metaphor took over. But, you know, if you think back to what we were talking about with Adams telling him to kill his ego, ignore, you follow your instinct to be humorous blindly, and basically from what we saw with his interaction with the ego, he ignored all of that.
That's something that was lost on me, and when I realized it on my second watch through, I felt kind of dumb. The irony of the fact that Adams is specifically telling him your instinct, your intuition is all joke. And he's supposed to kill his ego, and he jumps out of the pod and goes, "That's a joke.
That's a joke.
That's a joke." The irony was completely lost on me the first time I watched it, and I watched it again and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, there is a small possibility that he's come full circle and he's being a caricature and he knows that his ego is this laughable piece of himself. But it feels much more like he's decided to embody the crassness and forget about the depth and the honesty that he can portray. Mm-hmm. And rather than, you know, lifting up Gata and highlighting L's and knowing that Mike is a redhead, he goes,
putting the Alley song
guys,
on the album.
Just chill out. Like, everything's a joke. Like, it's not that big of a deal. This brings us full circle because Adams wants to blame Biff with, and Biff is like, Rick's got me juggling 4 guys.
That is so good.
I really identify with Biff. And I want to be Biff. I want to juggle 4 guys in float tanks.
I'm not a, what does he say? I'm not a joke, or I'm not a metaphor.
I'm not a trick.
I'm not a trick, yeah. I'm not a trick.
Poor Biff. Like, I didn't even write about this song.
Yeah.
But I also, like, I do take a little bit of umbrage to when he, like, jumps into the studio and is immediately able to, like, blast out, "That's a joke." That's a,
you know,
because
interestingly enough, the album, he runs in and goes, any beat, go.
Beat, exactly. And it happens to be.
Yeah.
And, like, if you're not acknowledging the fact that the beat is part of your rap, like, who are you? Like, where are you coming from? It almost highlighted the egoism of Dave.
And that song was very egocentrical too. We kind of talked about that.
And, you know, it's one thing if that's one song among many. Okay. If you are using ego, you let ego go up to 11, you write sick rhymes, you spit fire, then ego cranks back down to a healthy 5, and you go, "Oh my God, Els, thank you for the beat that let my ego just totally thrash." And Mike, thanks for keeping my business afloat. And Gata, like, you just fucking make me happy.
Yeah, but this is
Whereas this whole season, ego's been at a 9+. Like, Gata's not that important. Mike's not that important. Els is not the only person who's important other than Dave is Benny Blanco, because Benny Blanco has bigger connections than Dave does. That's my interpretation of the whole ego death. Like, an ego death is a temporary experience.
Right.
If you have a true ego death, whether it's through a near-death experience, a drug-induced experience, a really fucked up real-life experience, like, you're not free of ego. You're not, like, 6 months later going to not have ego. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying there's no exceptions. I'm saying, like, for the vast majority of people, an ego death is a temporary experience. And what I hope it would teach an individual is that ego is loud, persuasive, attractive, powerful, just seems like the real deal, but needs to be tempered.
Yeah.
So I am really stoked to see episode 10.
Penith.
Yes.
Actually, I think it's called Dave. But the album is called Penith.
Okay.
So we're both looking forward to episode 10, season 2 finale.
Season 2 finally.
That's it. This is it. Stay tuned. Check back. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
If you, I'm going to rewatch season 1 for funsies because I've really enjoyed season 2. And if you think that Stegawow should go back and review season 1, I want to know about it because I want to know what the people want personally.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for watching.
Deuces.